you have to understand like why you're doing it. It's like I'm doing this because I'm investing, I'm buying a piece of a company. I'm going to be ultimately an owner of this. So I want to know what's going on. I want to make sure that my money is not going to go to zero. So you have to have that type of mentality as opposed to, oh, this company is so sexy. It's going to have like double-digit growth forever. You know, whatever the media is splashing in headlines, right? You got to dig way deeper. Look for the risks. What is your downside? What is the worst case scenario? Everything else is a bonus. No one ever worries about whether a stock is going to do well. You worry if it's going to do poorly. Yeah. Oh, I'm worried it's going to go up 50%. No one worries about that, right? It's, oh, shoot, I'm worried that they're going to, lose sales, lose market share, and my money's going to go down, right? That's what you have to mitigate your risks and know what you're in for.
This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Michelle Hung is on a mission to empower women to take control of their finances by providing them the education and support in order to gain the confidence they need to make their own investment decisions. Michelle has a degree in math, she's a Chartered Financial Analyst, and worked on Bay Street as an investment banker for 7 years. But instead of keeping all this financial knowledge to herself and continuing to make buckets of money in IB, as she calls it, Michelle decided to focus on helping others. Michelle wrote a fantastic investment workbook called The Sassy Investor, which was just released in early 2019. As you'll hear in the interview, I'm a huge fan of this book. It's colorful and fun, and you can even color in it. But it also breaks down personal finance and investing so it's easy to understand. As she states on page 6 of the book, Michelle wrote The Sassy Investor to create an inviting and comforting environment for women when dealing with finances. I like this book so much, Michelle agreed to give me 3 copies to give away to my listeners. To enter the giveaway, head to bohumphreys.com/giveaway before March 31st, 2019. And if you're listening to this after the giveaway is closed, you can get a copy of the book for yourself at thesassyinvestor.ca. Michelle joined me in the studio in Hamilton to share her personal finance story.
Immigrants to Canada. I was born in Vancouver, and then we moved to Toronto when I was really, really young. So they just, worked their way up. Money we never talked openly about it.
Okay.
But we were very frugal. I was very fortunate.
So you could feel that influence from them?
You
kind of knew that, frugality is important in life?
Yeah, it was very important to live within your means. And, a lot of times where I wanted something like a toy, mom would say no, just outright no, didn't give me a reason. She'll just give me those strict Asian tiger mom eyes and be like, no. And then I would not even question her. But of course, Christmas came around, we would get one toy, and I felt very blessed. And looking back, obviously very lucky to be able to have that type of life.
It's really interesting though. Like a lot of kids are, especially these days, are just not used to hearing no. And so you had a little bit of no from the beginning there.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it got you used to, if you hear no so you're not maybe so afraid of somebody saying no to you, or you don't know, what to do with that.
Exactly. I don't kick and scream. There was none of that.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm watching my little cousins grow up, and the Christmases are crazy. They have their own sections when it comes to Christmas gifts,
Isn't that
section.
Nuts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, you guys are so lucky, but hey, that's, I guess, a product of having so many aunts, right?
It's not like we're 65 years old or anything. I feel like we just went through this sort of. Well, how old are you?
I'm 34.
34, and I'm 38. So we're sort of the same generation.
Mm-hmm.
You're much more of a millennial
yes.
than I am now. So 34, what year are we in? So that's 1984?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So that's center of millennial
Yes, exactly. The mid,
category.
yeah. You're like the cusp.
Right, yeah, I'm.
You're on the
Yeah,
edge,
I'm.
yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's what I like to say. Some people will push me into the Gen X, but I guess I'm an Xennial, which is sort of that's the cusp, right,
Yes.
between Gen X and millennial. So you grew up and you just frugality was. What did your parents do? Well, how long were they here before you were born?
Just a few years, I think. So my dad came here. He's a chef.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so blessed with so much good food.
Sure, that sounds great.
But when he came here, like he started off as a dishwasher, just like a lot of immigrants here that they're getting on their feet. So just started from the bottom up, renting a place from a friend that's been here a bit longer. Then moved our way up to, buying an apartment and then a house. So we moved up to being, a middle-class family in Scarborough and Markham.
When did you come over from Vancouver?
Oh, I was maybe 3 years old.
So when you were really young.
Really young, yeah. So
was there opportunity here then for your parents? Like better work here or connections?
Some definitely connections in the restaurant space.
Yeah, okay.
My mom worked she was a waitress. She worked at St. Hubert's.
Oh, wow.
And Swiss Chalet, yeah. So everyone my parents were in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
And yeah, just like raising 2 children and raising a family and trying to build a life here. Started from the bottom up.
Yeah. And are they retired now?
Yeah, my mom is retired. My dad's still working a bit. He's actually at the Hilton in Markham.
Wow.
So he does private dining. Started off as a dishwasher. Now he's, an executive chef and he creates menus and just...
That's amazing.
And he's had a really great career. He's cooked for, like celebrities, Jackie Chan. And yeah. It's,
very cool.
Yeah, so he's very, I guess he's pretty, I would say popular in the Chinese community in terms of Chinese cuisine.
And you didn't want to go into, like, I'm sure you're a great cook, but you didn't want to go into the profession?
No, my mom, like my parent, well, specifically my mom, she wanted me to get an education and not work as hard because the restaurant business is like just a lot of hours, a lot of work. They actually had their own restaurant way back in Vancouver.
Oh, really?
And then they said they closed it down. They're like, it's way too much work. It's really stressful. We don't want to be, at least at that time, my dad didn't want to be a business owner anymore. So he gave that up and then just...
It's not for everybody.
It's not for everyone, exactly.
Like you said, it does take a lot of work and they just wanted to focus on working for somebody else and getting the money, getting the paychecks.
Exactly. Yeah.
It seems when you're a business owner, which you are now.
Exactly. Yes, I am.
The money, like you make the money and then you spend the money and you're not taking it from anyone except for clients.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you work for somebody else, the clients pay them and then they pay you, and it's a nice arrangement. But there are some, as you know,
there are some drawbacks.
Drawbacks to both situations.
For sure. Exactly.
So, and we'll get to that in terms of your current situation. So, yeah, let's go back then. So you're learning about frugality. Your parents are working hard, trying to... So does that mean, when did you start to work in the restaurants at all? Did you get into there when you were younger?
No, I never worked in the restaurants. I've never worked in a restaurant.
No. So it seems like they actively kept you out of
that, or they just wanted me to, go to school, study hard, study lots, get an office job so I could work 9 to 5 and not work as many hours as my dad does.
It's funny how that, like, we think that's the ideal, right? When we're doing something else than that. And then when you start doing it, you're like, man, I can't wait to get out of this.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, what are my parents talking about? Like, this sucks.
Definitely, like I can understand what they're saying. Like, it's not as long hours, and it definitely knowledge work is not as grueling, right? It's taxing in the brain. It can be stressful, but it's not, you're not on your feet, for 12 hours or whatever shifts that they would do.
Yeah.
And so does that mean you didn't work during high school or anything?
I did work in high school. I started off, as soon as I turned 16, I got a job at High & Zell's, a supermarket.
Supermarket.
Yeah,
nice.
It doesn't exist. I don't think it exists anymore.
No, I know the name though.
Yeah. So I started off there, and then I worked at A&W.
Nice.
And then I worked at Lingerie and Company. I think they're owned by La Vie en Rose, which is... Yeah, I think they still exist.
Okay, yeah.
So retail
in
for
malls,
a bit.
Like these all seem like mall.
Mall jobs.
Mall jobs,
retail.
yeah.
And then I moved up. I started tutoring math.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so I was in high school tutoring math, and I was making $20 an hour. And back then, even now, it's very decent, especially for a high school student.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's actually, that's great. 20, not that it's 8 hours a day or anything like that, right? But for whatever part-time hours you were getting,
exactly.
And of course, this is a bit foreshadowing, but that means you were very good at math in high school.
Yes, yes, I was good at math.
And we will get to that in a sec. So you're making money for what in high school? Like what are you using this money for that you're getting from these jobs?
Just for fun.
Yeah.
I wanted to, buy clothes and go out, and that's it. There wasn't really a particular reason except for, hey, I want to be an adult and work and make money.
Yeah, that's right.
Because before that, just for a little bit, I didn't start getting an allowance until I was in grade 9, so 14.
Oh, really? So that late, yeah.
Yeah, so my mom gave me, I think maybe $10 a week, and she's like, here's your lunch money. And $10 a week, it went a long way because food was pretty cheap back then. I'd buy like a patty for $1 or even like some fries for $2.
So you could get a lunch. Toonie Tuesday, did you have that?
Yeah, Toonie Tuesdays, yeah.
Is that KFC?
Yeah, my high school was right next to Markville Mall. Yeah.
I don't know why that's a thing, but wow, it's so ubiquitous.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're actually able to make do with that $5 or $10, but not for a while, not forever.
No, not forever. But I was really good at saving. I didn't buy lunch every day. It was, I just didn't want to eat cafeteria food every day. So I would bring my own lunch. And then before I knew it, I've saved enough, like a month goes by and I'll check my little pouch and be like, oh, cool, I have $40. I can go out and go eat at a restaurant with my friends or go watch a movie.
So this natural frugality, which you seem to have inherited, it was working out for you. And then you're like, well, I want to buy this thing. And of course, mom and dad would probably say, no, you can't have that thing. Or you can have one of the things. And you're like, I want more things. So you go and work for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't for other bigger ticket items like back to school shopping. My mom would go shopping with me, right? But for the most part, I never really had to ask for money throughout school. I was a very busy kid. I was in a lot of extracurricular activities, so I wasn't really sitting around, I'm bored, I'm gonna go to the mall and buy things. No, my life was never, growing up like as a high school student, I was never like that. I've always had something to do, so which kept me out of trouble, but two, like, just it's good for, development, not going to the mall and spending money or buying coffee and just spending, period. Right?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because a lot of people who are like, the money just disappears. I feel like the people who just have money and it stays in savings and they're like, money's just there. It's because they don't have time to spend it, right?
Exactly.
Or waste it. Or the things that they're doing to keep busy are actually making the money as well.
Exactly.
In some way or another, right? Or furthering their skills or future career or education. And so you ended up getting you went for a degree in math?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
At Waterloo,
so you love math so much. Now this isn't like, if you go for a degree in math, this becomes way different than the math that we learned in high school, right? Like, this is fundamental, like, stuff that like practical examples don't really apply here, right?
No, it was like 95% of the stuff I learned, like all the math stuff I learned, does not apply. Ever. It's a lot of theory.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just,
but you liked it.
I did not like it.
Oh, you didn't like? Oh, okay. So
I actually almost dropped out of my math program.
Oh, really?
Yeah, first year, because I was struggling.
Yeah.
In high school, it was easy. And then it was a huge change. During first year, I'm like, oh, I'm almost failing. I'm going to be put on probation. I don't like it. It's hard. Wow. And then I just got my act together. I stuck around, and mainly because, and I thought about switching schools, going to York or something and doing like a business, getting a business degree. Yeah. But then it was really like, I was way too lazy to do the paperwork and transfer. I already moved to Waterloo. So I was like, all right, I'll just stick around and study better, study smarter, get help, and just work harder, put in more hours.
So for something like math, like, is it memorization and just understanding, like really working on the concepts until you understand them sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a lot of practice, and mainly it's understanding it, because I found that a lot of the profs, they're PhD people, they're researchers, everything's intuitive for them. And I remember one prof saying, "Oh, intuitively," like he would say that all the time. I'm like, it's not intuitive. Are you crazy? Like, I'm 19 years old.
Can't just throw that word around.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just, and that's the big disconnect between, I guess, people that are profs that are teaching this type of material, and then here we are, like fresh brains, and we're trying to grasp this in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
So you just really have to put in so many hours, and get help, and getting the TAs to get you to understand, getting them to break everything down.
Yeah.
So that you understand. So I remember there was one time I went to a TA and I'm like, I don't understand this. I just don't. And then I got him he's like, okay, here's a circle. And then he drew something. I'm like, okay, now I get it. Just as simple as drawing diagrams.
Everybody learns differently.
Exactly.
This is Goodwill Hunting stuff, right? Like, would they put like a problem on the board and
here's a proof. Here's a proof, and
I love it.
I can't remember. Yeah.
And were your, like, I mean, not to focus on Goodwill Hunting so much, but were your professors like the same sort of caliber as what you would see in that movie? Like the guy who's like, he's got all these awards and all that kind of stuff, or in math? Some of them?
Because maybe some of them were really kooky, but yeah. So it's just they're there to maybe just do research, and I guess they have to teach. But some of them were there because they want to teach, and those are the really good profs, because they break everything down.
That's important.
Yeah. So it's just a mix of both.
So we'll move on from the degree in a second, but what is the value of a math degree to you? Like now that you have a little perspective, getting that math degree, how has it helped you, other than like you're not applying it, specifically, but like, what is it, problem solving? What other awesome skills do you think you got from going through that?
Definitely the problem solving, and everything else is so much easier.
Yeah, that's it, eh?
Everything else is so much easier. I have my CFA designation, and it taught me how to study hard, put in the hours, and just put my head down. And there were times where I can just sit down for a good 10, 12 hours and not move. And just being able to building that work ethic so you get the results that you need. That's what it's really taught me. It's not the material. It was never about the material. It's about, can you put in the effort and the hours to understand this and just get the results that you need to move on. That was it.
And you could probably apply that to a lot of degrees. It's just very different, like than having to write essays, for the whole thing. Maybe you did have to write some essays, but it's like probably mostly problem solving.
A lot of problem solving.
With numbers and Greek letters and all of the above, right? And things that we can't even understand. If you could probably draw out some nice formulas for us that are totally insane looking.
Remember.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good point. And obviously you had to be good enough at the math to obviously you're excelling in high school, so they recommended you go this, and then you just had to be like, I'm going to crack down, as you said. Okay, so you get this degree. So you have a Bachelor of Mathematics.
Yes.
And what do you do with it?
So I specialized in finance. So you got to be math.
So you did have some finance in there. When did you start touching on the finance part?
Maybe
was that early on?
Yeah, second year, because you choose your path very early on, and you can switch because you take the same fundamental math courses. I took my business, so it's a math biz double major, single degree.
Okay, yeah.
So I did my business courses at Wilfrid Laurier. Those were the fun courses, or rather, I would say the easier courses.
So you knew that you liked business and finance specifically. I mean, the math kind of joins in together.
Exactly, yeah. So I wanted to challenge myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a math degree. Let's just go for it and see. And yeah, it worked out really well. And I chose finance, so I took a lot of finance theory courses.
Derivatives, stuff like that?
Yeah, stats, mathematical stats.
Because to me, a math and finance degree means to me that you're going to be working like in the back end of a trading floor or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Was that the idea?
Yeah, I wanted to. So I was in the co-op program as well.
Okay.
So my first job, I worked at the government, just administrative job. It was great. It was a great first co-op job.
What part of the government?
provincial government. So
Okay.
it was the internal audit division.
Ah, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, not the CRA, but whatever.
Yeah, we audited the provincial government on an internal basis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So internal audit, you audited the government.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, for sure.
Having permission to say that the government is doing something wrong.
Yeah,
It's like it's my job.
that's right. Yeah, trying to work out all the inefficiencies.
And this was, so these were like numerical audits, like you're looking at figures, that kind of thing. Like,
I think I never did any of that. I was
Yeah.
just a
Oh, of course, you were just
student.
part of
Yeah,
it,
but I
yeah.
think there were numerical, and I think it was mainly that, and maybe processes as well.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you started doing that. That was a co-op.
That was a
You get
co-op.
paid for these co-ops?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How did you pay for school?
Co-op jobs.
Really?
Yeah.
That's how you paid for school?
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
first year I did get an OSAP loan.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my only loan that I got. So I graduated from university with, I don't know, like $9,000 of OSAP, and
Yeah.
that was it, which is
It's like nothing.
nothing. Yeah.
It's like a third of what maybe some people
Exactly.
would have.
Yeah. Because the way my program was structured, it was you do 4 months of school. The first year, 8 months of school. So it's like financially heavy on like your wallet. And then after it's co-op work term, and then 4 months of school, and then 4 months of work, 4 months of school. So you're alternating working and getting these jobs, these internships and they paid well.
That's great.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
So you would recommend if somebody had a co-op
100%.
opportunity?
100%.
Yeah, I should have gone to Laurier. I went to Western. I got the general business. It's now called BMOS, a Bachelor of Management Organizational Studies. It was a Bachelor of Administrative and Commercial Studies back then. But I did get into the 4-year Laurier business program, which had co-op.
Yeah, that's a
And
great one.
I didn't know the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was busy touring as a musician in the summers,
Right.
but it had also been nice to get early experience in business or doing whatever.
Yeah.
And so how many did you have? How many co-ops?
It was equivalent to 2 years of work.
How many different places?
So the second job I got was at Loblaw Companies,
Oh, nice.
and I did that for 3 terms. So basically 1 year.
Okay.
And that was internal controls compliance. So a little bit similar to like along the lines of accounting. But we're auditing or testing controls like over like the processes within the organization to make sure there are no deficiencies, to make sure everything's in check and there's no room for fraud.
This is what most chartered accountants do. Is actually they have to do it to become a chartered accountant.
Yes.
Is field work and audit and auditing other companies.
Exactly.
And testing, as you said, so controls being things that they have in place to make sure that everything's working as it's supposed to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then they would, if something was broken, maybe then they would look into it and try to
They fix it.
recommend
Yeah. Exactly.
what's happening. So you did that for equivalent of a year. So are you like loving auditing now? Because this is your experience.
Yeah. So at that point, I thought about, maybe I should switch out of finance and pursue a CA.
Yeah.
And be an accountant. Like all of my other colleagues and mentors, they were all CAs. They were
Sure.
they worked at Deloitte, they worked at EY.
Yeah.
It sounded so amazing. But then there was one guy, he's like, you should be an iBanker. I'm like, what? He's like, you should be an investment banker. They make so much money.
It's true.
It is
if
true.
you have the acumen for it. And so is that where you went?
That was my next job.
Okay.
I got myself into investment banking. So I looked it up and I'm like, this sounds really good. Like deal making, and my major was in finance and I get to put that to work. It sounded like a lot of fun. And then movies like Wall Street, Wall Street. So I looked into it and I said, okay, I'm going to get myself into IB. And so I did my research and just I applied to all the jobs, all the banks and stuff. And then luckily I was able to land my next job. Actually, no, it took I had to do one more work term at Loblaws before I was able to land myself a job in iBanking. So it took a little bit. It's not really that long, but eventually I got myself into a small brokerage firm in Toronto.
Okay.
So I did that for 8 months straight.
Wow.
And then I went back to school for 8 more months, and then I graduated in 2008, right at the height of the recession.
Right. Good timing.
Uh-huh.
Before we get into that, so can you explain, like in simple terms, what does an investment banker do? Like, because people talk about it a lot, like making deals and doing all this stuff. Like, what would be a typical situation for an investment banker, like that you saw, or that you did later if you want to jump ahead?
So what investment banking entails is we help companies raise money in the capital markets.
Okay.
We help public companies raise money just to expand their businesses, to grow, or private companies go public so they have access to capital.
So that capital is money.
Yes.
So companies need money so that they can spend it on things.
To
I'm just
grow,
going to
yeah.
break it down to like 5-year-old level. To get that money, they could go to a regular bank and borrow the money.
Yes.
Or they could issue shares,
yes.
or look for private investors who have a lot of money, and the investment bankers will either, were you working for a bank? No, a small brokerage.
So we broker the transaction.
Does a broker have money?
No, our job is to find the money.
You're
so
the
we're
connector.
We're the connector, the middleman, middle person in bridging the investors, people that have money, and then the companies that need the money. So our job is to help the company be, marketable. So we help them with their pitch decks, their presentations, and like, this is what investors are looking for. Make sure you have these in line, all the questions that they're going to ask. Make sure you have these ready.
Okay.
And then in terms of working with the investors, we ask them, what are you looking for? What do you want? So then we'll bring them companies that they're interested in.
Okay. So it's like it's a sales sort of job and relationship management thing, and also understanding numbers enough, which is your expertise, which is why you had value there, right? But also did you know at this point, you did a lot of retail jobs. You can work with people. You know that you're good at, sort of connecting and managing people at this point.
Yeah. I wanted to learn. It's a good balance between working with people, relationship management, and just sitting in front of a computer and working with numbers. That's what I wanted. It was a good balance. It wasn't too heavy on either side.
Yeah, so it wasn't just doing straight math calculations in the back end, which you probably could have ended up getting a job.
I could have.
Like that. Okay, so you finished school. Did you end up going back to that brokerage?
I did, after about almost a year after I graduated.
Oh, what did you do during that year?
I was unemployed.
Okay. Okay, sorry, back to 2008.
2008,
Yay.
I was like,
jobs for everyone.
Yes.
No.
No, not really. Actually, it was good. It was nice to have that break because I was able to work on selling the house that I bought.
Okay.
In Waterloo.
So let's step back then.
Okay.
So how did you get money to buy a house this is during school?
Yes. So I read an article somewhere, little piece about, this parent helped their kid buy a house in university.
Yeah, there's a lot of articles about that, but at that time.
At that time, yes. Because
you listened.
Yes. I'm like, and I made this pitched it to my parents. I was like, look, I could do this. I could rent it out. I don't have to pay anyone rent. And, it can actually be manageable and we can make money.
And you'll be there for at least 4 years.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, your parents bought this?
Well, yeah. We'll then have all the cash, but we leveraged our house in Markham with the equity. So it was an equity line of credit off our current house that we were living in, and we used that as a down payment. And if I can remember, I think the house cost $160,000 at that time.
In total?
Yeah, in total, yeah. And that is unheard of now.
Unheard of, yeah.
Yeah, we can't get that ever again here.
Well, how big was it?
It was a 3-bedroom, 3-washroom townhouse.
Wow. So you're in one and you rent out 2 others?
In one room.
One
Yeah,
bedroom?
and the basement. There was a basement.
So you lived in it, though?
I lived in it, yeah, for the for a year. And then my boyfriend at the time, he did the same thing. He bought a house.
Oh, he did it too?
He did it too, yeah. And then I moved in with him, so I was able to rent out my whole house.
So wow. So you have an income property while you're in school.
Yeah.
Now, of course, your parents contributed.
They helped,
so how much did you have to put down? Like 20%?
We put down 50% because we got like $80,000 line of credit. We just put that towards the mortgage, and then $80,000 mortgage.
And I suppose the risk is very low in this kind of situation because you would have been living there no matter, and you would have had to been paying rent, which is probably equivalent to the mortgage payments anyhow.
Right? Exactly. It was profitable. It was easy to manage, and And I was working co-op, so I had some income.
But what about, you said home equity line of credit?
And I had to pay the interest on that.
Yeah, okay. So the rent from the house was able to pay that, plus whatever remaining, $80,000 mortgage.
Plus the condo fees, plus whatever utilities.
So that all covered up.
Yeah.
That wasn't stressful. You did all the numbers.
I did all the numbers. Was it stressful? Yes, it was stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was,
it's labor intensive. Right?
Sure.
You have to get people.
It's a job.
Yeah, I had to hustle and find students. And it was getting competitive because at that time, there were builders that were coming in. They were buying up like duplexes, or they were building places.
Okay,
and
maybe cheaper places.
Yeah, cheaper places. The downside was my place was a little bit further out from the university.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of trouble attracting some students because most students didn't have a car. But still, there was a bus line, and then there were obviously the occasional students that do have a car, and they would I never had much of an issue renting it out.
Okay, so you were able to figure it out mostly. It's just good to talk about the pros and cons, because sometimes we were like, oh, got a house early and just had all this success, and then that it paid for itself, and or like Sean Cooper, I lived in the basement, right?
Yes.
And the house paid for itself. And it all sounds so, wonderful.
It sounds glamorous. It sounds easy, but
it's not easy, right?
No.
There's a roof that needs replacing here and there. So, I mean, maybe you can chat about did you have like a couple of big incidents that happened in the 4 years or longer?
Oh, yeah.
Anything?
Yeah, there was like
maybe pick one or two.
I think the water heater broke, so there was a leak in the basement.
Okay,
and I wasn't living in the house at the time. But luckily I lived close enough, so, was a good landlord. I rushed over right away, and I was like, okay, all right, like we're gonna get this fixed right now, just because there were people living there, and you have to be responsible. You don't want to be a bad landlord. You don't want people to write bad things about you, and it's not comfortable. Like, people are paying you rent, so you have to do your job. So stuff like that will happen. And it was a fairly new house. It was about 6 or 7 years old when I bought it.
Okay.
So it's, compared to like a lot of the other houses there, it's a relatively new house. It was nice. I didn't foresee any, other than that, there were no structural issues or anything like that.
Just, things happen. Things are working constantly. Water heaters, furnaces.
Yeah.
It's like the fact that they don't break down more often is surprising to me.
That's right. Yeah.
So I guess it maybe says that these are pretty hardily built things. And so you had to replace that, and was that a significant cost, and where would you get the money at the time?
I think we replaced it. I think I started leasing it.
Okay, so you were able to spread the cost.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I'm like, I don't want to put up any like upfront capital on this. So if I can like spread it out, then I will do that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty good. But like, these are things that you got to take care of. You might have been in the middle of studying for an exam.
Exactly.
Or who knows what. You might have been out of town.
Exactly.
We don't think about the job that it is, and you can contract it out to somebody else, but then that's your property, right?
Exactly.
So so you have this, and you're paying down this remaining mortgage and the line of credit interest, but not the principal itself.
I think it was just interest. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting, and no pun intended there. Now it's 2008, and you have this house, which, do you remember how much of the mortgage was left?
A lot. It's only been a couple of years.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted it. I didn't want to take care of it anymore. I didn't want to, I just didn't want anything to do with it. I'm like, okay, I just want to sell it and move on with my life. Okay,
so there's another lesson that you have this asset, and if you're trying to do something else with your life, you got to...
Exactly.
I don't want to
drive with it. Yeah, I don't want to drive back and forth, and then have to find students every year or every term. Yeah, I just didn't want to have that anymore. And the real estate market back then was certainly nothing like how it is now. Right?
Oh wow. So you bought it in what, 2004?
2005 or 6.
Okay, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And now 2008.
Yeah.
And you want to sell it during a financial crisis.
Yeah, exactly. It was right before, and I
oh my God.
And I got rid of it right before the market dipped a bit.
Okay.
At that point, so I was very lucky.
Wow.
I had one offer and I took it.
Okay.
One offer, imagine that.
Yeah,
in Ontario, yeah.
I know it's a totally different world these days, but okay, so 2008, so you got rid of that, able to pay back the line of credit.
Yep, everything's paid off. Yep.
What, bank some money?
Make a little bit of money, yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
That becomes savings for you or for your parents, or what happens to that money?
Actually, I gave it to my parents because at that time
Nice.
my dad wasn't working either.
Okay.
So it's like, here, I'm not gonna just take it. I don't. Well, I don't need it. I'm
You
a
have
student.
earning potential.
I have earning
Yeah.
potential, even though I was unemployed. But then my dad also wasn't working. My mom wasn't working. So it's like, all right, well, here you go. Obviously, it's the right thing to do.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How are you paying for your living expenses? Working other jobs?
Yeah. So I started racking up some debt because I wasn't working. And even though like I made some money off the house, I still gave the money to my parents because I was like, I can manage this. It's fine, right?
This is credit card debt?
Credit card debt.
Okay.
Because when I started working my co-op jobs, I started getting credit cards.
Yes.
Yep.
You are employed now.
Exactly.
And so you're getting a credit score.
I was a big girl. I was like, here I am adulting. Here are credit cards. and I had to travel a bit for work as well.
Okay.
And so I thought I was just a baller and started buying things, and the companies, they just show up on your campus.
Yep.
And somehow, I don't know, I can't even remember how I was given my first one, but
you got it.
I got it, yeah.
And you were somewhat responsible during school, or
I was.
Did they always have a balance?
There were balances, yeah. And I remember at one point I was really stressed. I'm like, how did I get myself into this? Like I start spending, but I was like, oh, I'm working next month or next semester, I can pay it off. But then I never did. I just kept like, it was just a vicious cycle. And then I'm like, okay, I got to pay for tuition. It all added up. And then it didn't help that my boyfriend at the time was also addicted to credit cards and spending. And we were just all about racking up our cards and living a good life. Like, we were,
like a competition.
Yeah, it was a competition. And I was like, oh, we live better than other students kind of thing, right? So we felt very entitled. We were very, obviously, looking back, it was very stupid.
Okay.
But at one point, I remember, okay, I'm so stressed about money. And what I did was I wrote a letter to my school and basically begging them for money. I'm like, I'm so stressed. I can't study. I don't know what to do. I applied for OSAP, but I got nothing. I think they gave me $100.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And then what happened was I got a reply and they're like, okay, here's a $1,200 bursary.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, it was very nice. I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. But hey, like, there's financial aid for a reason. The resources are there. And I was like, I was thrilled. It didn't obviously pay off my entire balance, but I was like,
but it gave you a little push.
Yeah, it was a nice push.
So people can just do this. They can just write into or go to their financial aid office and have a conversation with someone. Say, I'm struggling a little bit with this and that. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I tell students. If you're really struggling, just ask your school. The schools have money, right?
They have lots of money.
It's just you have to, if it takes writing a letter, sending in some proof, then do it. Obviously, it's worth it.
So you are racking up credit card debt during this year and applying for jobs left and right.
Yes.
Applying to go back to this brokerage that because you had a good time there.
Yeah. And I asked them, I'm like, hey, can I come back and work? And they're like, we'd love to have you, but there's just nothing. Business is so slow right now.
Sure.
Because they're a small brokerage, they have to manage their head count.
Yeah. So how long did it take?
Exactly 1 year from when I graduated, they hired me back. But right before that, I managed to get back into the provincial government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I did that for a few months. I was working there. They paid me minimum wage, which I was okay with, because at one point I'm like, I gotta find work.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah. So then, and then I knew I wasn't gonna be there for long, but at least I was able to make money, fill up my time, and at that time I started studying for my CFA level 1.
Okay, so this is Chartered Financial Analyst?
Yes.
This is less of a personal finance sort of job that you're in, than more of a
corporate finance,
big business.
Yeah,
and so they want you to have really good financial analyst ability. So for making the deals.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so you go back in there. And then where does that take you? Like how long do you stay, and are you making big deals?
I was there for a good 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm like a banker. I'm gonna do deals, and
okay.
It was a nice ride. It was we were very resource focused. So when oil was just skyrocketing, when gold was booming, everyone was, it was great. Everyone made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Until we didn't.
Okay. And then did it close or?
Yes, we actually got acquired in 2014 by a competitor.
Okay.
It was 100% employee owned.
Yeah.
So it was just like shareholders like just fighting with each other, management. It was crazy. It was very dramatic. It should actually be a movie.
Yeah, well, there are similar movies, I'm sure, but like what are they fighting over? Just the direction of the company, that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, like how it was to be managed, what was our exit strategy. So it was, no, I think we like, you know, speaking, I guess, like from the point of view of management and the biggest shareholders, they're like, oh no, one person wanted to sell the business and get their money back. The other wanted to keep going and try to ride through, you know, just weather the storm. Like we can get through this. It's cyclical.
Yeah.
So eventually we're going to get out of this, right? So a lot of conflicts right there. Couldn't agree on just a lot of disagreements, and then differences in personalities. But ultimately it's, look what happens when money gets in the way.
Yeah.
It just brings out the ugly in people.
Well, and how do you fit in here? So you're making deals, you're making money. Now you're banking. Now you're starting to bank a lot of money.
Yeah, I made good money. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
as a 20-something-year-old,
paying off the credit cards.
Paid everything off.
Are you like, I hate credit cards at this point, or you're like, I'm using them because I'm making money and I'm living the life? Where, like, did you have a shift of?
Oh yeah, I said, one, I will never be unemployed again.
Okay, yeah.
I will never have credit card debt again.
Yeah.
So that was, as soon as I paid it off, I was like, okay, I'm so happy. Like I feel so good. I can start investing. And then I started investing.
This is the first time that you really have money to invest, other than the house, which was a very specific situation, right? A home equity line of credit to get a living place for you and maybe make some money.
Exactly.
But you learned about investing in school a little bit.
Yeah.
But more like the technical parts of it, right? Did you learn about the emotional parts of investing in school?
Nothing to do with emotional stuff. But I did start reading investment books when I was during university.
Okay. So you started personal finance ones?
Yeah, like Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch. I started reading those when I was like in second, third year.
Okay.
I was recommended by my cousin. I really looked up to him. He taught me a lot about investing. And he's like, read these books, start with this. So then I read it. I loved it. And I actually put some money to work. I was like, all right, I'm going to buy, I think Air Canada was my first stock that I purchased. And then my cousin's like, that is one of the worst investments you can make because, you know, those guys like Warren Buffett will be like, those are the worst types of investments because the fixed costs are so high. So that's one of the first lessons, like first things that they tell you, avoid these types of businesses.
Really? Okay. So when you say investing, especially at this time, you're talking about like value investing, finding specific companies to buy? Yeah, companies
at this time.
So
but value, but more so like fundamental.
Okay.
Right? So I wasn't really like I was reading it, but I didn't really fully understand what I was reading.
Sure.
I just wanted to be like just invest and make money. I was like, oh, Air Canada is so cheap right now. Well, why are they cheap? They're like nearing bankruptcy. That's why, right? So in terms of value investing, it's not necessarily the case where just because it's cheap, it's a good buy. It's cheap for a reason.
Yes.
So
you read Warren Buffett. Like, what would be would have been a takeaway, or maybe a takeaway today from, say, his style, like that you've incorporated into what you do?
Buy businesses that you understand. Buy businesses that have moats, like solid competitive advantages, and businesses that will be around in 20, 50 years.
And how do you know that you're doing a lot of reading? Now, of course, you're you're pretty good at research at this point, right? I mean, you're looking into your Chartered Financial Analyst, which means you're reading a lot, right? Yes. About the world, like a world economy, that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, like business news, financial reports, annual reports, like analyzing companies, just digging deep into everything, like their business models, their financials, so
you're understanding it like a business inside out.
Exactly.
Before you decide to invest in them.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And-
that's so if somebody has that mind or interest, right? Is it more about interest? If this stuff is interesting to you, then go for it and then you can understand it as you go.
Yeah, you have to take an interest in it. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Because it's, you're sifting through like pages of annual reports and, like lawyers put these documents together, right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
not exactly, it's not exactly the most, the funnest thing to read, but you have to take an active interest in it, and you have to keep, you have to understand like why you're doing it. It's like, I'm doing this because I'm investing, I'm buying a piece of a company. I'm going to be ultimately an owner of this. So I want to know what's going on. I want to make sure that my money is not going to go to zero. So you have to have that type of mentality as opposed to, oh, this company is so sexy. It's going to have like double-digit growth forever kind of thing. And, whatever the media is splashing in headlines, right? You got to dig way deeper than.
So whatever the sort of almost the legal reports they have to issue, the truth that they have to put out, look at those versus like what's in the newspaper.
100%. You got to look at the risks, right? You always have to look for the risks. What is your downside? What is the worst case scenario? And that's one of the things that he teaches you. It's like you have to know your downside first and foremost. Everything else is a bonus. No one ever worries about whether a stock is going to do well. You worry if it's going to do poorly.
Yeah.
Right?
You want to protect.
I'm worried it's going to go up 50%. No one worries about that, right? It's, shoot, I'm worried that they're going to, lose sales, lose market share.
Yeah.
And my money's going to go down, right? That's what you have to mitigate your risks and know what you're in for.
Yeah. So is this how you still invest today?
For sure.
Yeah. And so you just you build your own portfolio of like, do you specifically buy different kinds of companies, or you just buy companies that you know are, I guess, maybe currently are going to do well and currently undervalued? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So I do pick my own stocks. When I started investing, it was, I got into it in 2010 and 2010 when I started loading up on a lot of the U.S. stocks. Okay. At that time, the U.S. was starting to recover, so everything was still so cheap. Like that crash was a huge crash. It was just significant, and you could have bought anything, you would have made money.
So it was like bargain basement prices
absolutely
for companies that are probably going to be around for decades to come.
Yeah,
and you have this opportunity to buy, and so you just do your research and you buy a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. So like bank stocks.
Canadian banks or U.S. banks?
U.S. banks.
U.S. banks, okay. The ones that survived.
The ones that survived, yeah. The ones that have like a good footprint. The ones that are less pegged to, capital markets. Because it's more volatile.
Sure.
With like their derivatives trading and who knows what else they're doing.
They're taking risks left
exactly,
and right.
Like they're off balance sheet transactions. So, companies like Wells Fargo, they're more like consumer, like B2C. Those are the more stable types of banks.
Yeah, okay. So like a lot of this is your education. First of all, your education, your degree, and then your experience working in a brokerage and then getting your CFA. This is where you got a lot of this ability to even understand all of this stuff that you're saying, right?
And reading, reading, yeah.
Can I just go and figure this stuff out? Like if I... I have to have the interest, right? You have to have interest.
You have to have interest
first.
You have interest,
okay, let's say I have interest, but I know nothing about finance. Can you teach me? Is that what you're doing lately?
Yeah. Well, first I actually started, I wanted to teach people how to pick stocks.
Oh, so that was the first thing.
That was initial thing.
Wait, so let's, so the company goes, under acquired, and then you leave or you get
I got laid off. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that when you decide what you want to do, or you're just thinking about what you're going to do next?
Oh, I took some time off. That's for sure. Yeah, I took time off.
So how can you take time off? You can afford it at this point?
At that point, I could afford. Yeah, I negotiated my severance.
Nice.
I had a nice 6-figure portfolio by then.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I have options. What do? I could do literally whatever I want.
This is
right.
4 years ago?
4 years. Yes, that's right. 4 years ago, 2014. Yeah.
2014. Okay. Yeah. So you take time off. You're thinking about what you want to do. And this is, I want to teach people the stuff that I know.
Exactly. So yeah, I thought I wanted to get back into banking. And then I did get a gig in venture capital. So that was like a 4-month contract that I did.
Very similar to what you were doing at a brokerage, like helping people connect people with other people to... invest in?
More so, I was on the investor side. So
Okay.
venture capital, this company, they had the money. So they were picking companies to invest in.
Great. So you're just one side of what you would
Exactly,
be.
yeah.
Okay.
So this was it was a good side. It was the fun
Yeah.
side. Also, but
you got the buckets of money.
Yeah.
And where to put them.
Similar things. We had to dig into companies, look
Sure.
at their financials and their business models, and be like, should we be putting money into this?
Okay. So you did that for a little bit.
So I did that for a little bit, and then after I said, okay, I was done with the job. I was going through the interviewing process, and I said, okay, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. I've always wanted my own business.
Mm-hmm.
I figured, I've learned so many things on Bay Street working in finance. People need to know what's up.
Yeah, right?
There's so much that people need to know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and I wanted to share the knowledge.
Well, it's nice of you because a lot of people want to keep it to themselves and just get richer.
Exactly.
Right?
And that was the thing. I was like, I can share this, or I can just continue working in capital markets, drive on, make a great living, and that's it. But then I said, okay, well, how can I help people? I just want to help people. And one of the most common questions I've always been asked was, what should I invest in?
Yeah.
So then
generally,
exactly. So I was like, okay, well, people want to know what to invest in. All right, I'll start showing them. So I was like, all right, well, I pick my own stocks, so I'll teach them how I think and how I pick my own stocks. And then I quickly realized, okay, most people should not be picking their own stocks.
Okay, good.
Because as I was writing this, writing the chapters and the content, I'm like, okay, how am I going to break this down for them? Because I wanted them to understand it as well. So it's a bit challenging. But then I also realized, will people put effort into this? Will they invest the time? So
this is an online course at the time?
At the time, it was just a book. I was just typing it out.
So you're starting your book. This is the famous book that I love this book. It's so colorful and it's got great illustrations, and it's just really kind of easy to look at and read. But it doesn't. Well, at the time of the airing, it should exist, right?
Yes, exactly.
And we'll talk about it at the end, and maybe we'll give some away. So this is the beginnings of your book. You knew you wanted to write a book?
At that time, I'm like, okay, I'll just write a book. I mean, I did math. I didn't know writing in school, right? But
this is a different kind of book, though. It's not,
you know.
It's not it's a little bit larger, which I like.
And a lot of illustrations.
And would you describe it as a workbook? Is that how you...
Yeah, I like to describe it. Yeah, a workbook. Yeah, because
you want people to write all over it.
Write in it, color in it. Coloring reduces
I love
anxiety.
all of the things that you can color. Like just while you're looking at something, you just color in the thing.
Exactly, draw in it. Yeah,
it makes it your own, right?
For sure.
The front page is colorful. That's your beginning. But on the inside, is it all black and white?
There's some black and white. There are some colored illustrations.
Okay, so there's a couple here and there, but mostly stuff that you can just get yourself a couple of markers and go to town on.
Yeah, color in it if you feel like scribbling, right?
Okay, well, you were talking to people and they're like, I don't want to pick my own stocks, or you realize they would be terrible at this. It's just your friends. Who are you finding is needing this at this time? Yeah,
so at that time it was just my friends, right? My circle. A lot of them would just have money sitting in a savings account, and then I saw how busy their lives were, what they were doing, and then I said, okay, you are not going to invest time into this, and I wouldn't really trust you to pick your own stocks, especially if you're not going to put the time in. I see that you kind of have no interest in it. So at the bare minimum, what do you need to do?
Yeah. Okay.
So then my book took a detour and just went down that path and be like, what is the bare minimum you need to do? And that is, all right, just invest in index funds, diversified funds, and that's it. At the bare minimum, you make an average return. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Something that will grow over time.
Exactly.
Nothing that's not you're not gonna make 20% in a year. Well, you might get 20% in 1 year, but the next year you might be minus 10%. So
exactly.
the idea is it'll mimic the market over 15, 20, 30 years. And it'll grow.
Exactly. And
versus sitting in a savings account.
Exactly. And you will do just fine just by doing that. And if you're consistent, and that's it.
So you're teaching people how to buy ETFs, index funds?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So that's the first bit. And then if they want to get a little more robust, you go into that too? Or?
Yeah. Like if you want to build around your core. So I say, hey, build your core first of solid just a few ETFs, like some US funds, maybe some Canadian funds. If you're Canadian, don't put too much emphasis on being like, it's called home-based buys. You don't want everything Canadian, right?
Sure.
So international, like solid, developed countries, those types of ETFs, like in Europe, invest in Asia, like countries like Singapore, Hong Kong. Like, don't neglect these types of countries. They have different industries, different sectors, very different from Canada. Canada's very resource heavy. Okay. So just educating them on the different types of investment opportunities that are out there.
And why diversity is important, and why it's good. Like when something happens in the world economy, certain things will go up, certain things will go down. And so having a balance is just good for that. And not just within a country, within the world, and different currencies and all this kind of stuff are involved, I'm sure, and all these different things to make them all diversified and balanced. The book is done, basically. Like, I'm looking at it, but is that the only copy? No.
Right, that's a draft copy.
So this is a draft. This is your draft copy, and so, but by the time this is airing, you'll have a whole bunch. It
will be out. Yes, it's due for release in December.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll post something in the show notes about, we're gonna give away 3 copies.
3 copies. Yeah.
Yeah. 3 copies to 3 different people, and I'll put all the details. It's probably January right now, 2019. We'll just say that. Yeah. that's the goal. It might be February right now. I don't know. Right. Yeah. We'll find out. And so this book is really, really cool, and it's mostly is it all illustrations of you mostly?
It is me.
And I think it's great. It's because it's like you're stuff. Like a superhero, I
guess, yeah. I think my best friend is in here too.
Okay, yeah, I love it.
And Faye, my illustrator, I think her mom's in here too.
And this is presenting it in a way that is just accessible to people and makes it more engaging. Was that your goal from the beginning? Yeah,
very inviting, not intimidating, and definitely not boring. So I have this thing where life should not be boring. Like, the only thing that should be boring may be your core portfolio.
Yeah, sure.
Your stocks. Yeah, invest in boring
but
stocks.
You want the rest. You want investing to be a little more exciting.
Exactly. Okay. And just the way it's presented. Because I've read a number of books, finance blogs, and I'm going through it. I'm like, wow, this is kind of boring. And if I find it boring, and I actually understand this stuff, I can't imagine anyone else. So that was my angle. I'm like, why does it have to be dry? So then I'm like, okay, well, and especially coming from, as a woman, and I understand how women think, and talking to all my friends, and they need, a lot of hand holding. So I created this book where it's very step by step, and a lot of people get very anxious around money. Yeah. So then there was this whole thing about, coloring books started surfacing, and people are coloring because it reduces the anxiety. So
it's such a great thing. I love it.
Yeah. So then I'm just going to blend everything in together. You can color, do your finances, but at the same time, you're going to learn about this stuff that would really help you out in life. This is about managing your life's resources, and this is about financial literacy. This is about, building your, financial wealth, building your future.
Now, I saw a couple of your videos on YouTube, and you talked about how it's really important for women to take control of their financial situation. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Going through a job loss and being unemployed after school, it was just, it's hard. It's stressful. It can get depressing. So I stress the importance of always being prepared for when life happens. And I was also in a 12-year relationship. Okay. So that ended when I was around the same time I was laid off. So at that time, life hit me. Everything hit me at the same time.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Exactly.
Right?
When it rains, it pours.
That's right.
At the time, I was living in a condo downtown with my boyfriend, and it was, it was a messy breakup. And one of the things he tried to do was dangle that carrot in front of me and be like, hey, you never have to work again if you stick around. And and then I was like,
I'm not going to say anything about that. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just these things. And then, as I was recovering, as I was healing, and I'm going on forums and reading about, relationships and, what people go through. And, I came across a forum where I was reading about these women that were stuck in very abusive relationships, physically abusive relationships. And I'm like, they had to, because they're like, I rely on my husband financially. I can't leave him because I have no money and he's the breadwinner.
That's terrible.
It's terrible. And I'm like, and my heart was breaking, and I'm like, this should not be the case.
So you had a little bit of a taste of that from
Yeah.
like that, this whole like, oh, I could be financially,
Mhm.
free or
Exactly.
no worries. But even though you know what you're doing,
Mhm.
you can imagine, the not being able to go when you really, really want to.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what really breaks my heart when I see things like that. And that's why I stress, you have to be in control of your money. Everyone like guy or girl, anybody, like you have to have your own account. You have to be independent from your spouse when it comes to money, because it's not just about like, just in case there's a divorce. It's what if like your spouse gets hit by a bus or something, right?
That's a really good
happens,
point.
illness, anything. And I still hear about it nowadays where, I talk to women, they're like, oh, well, my husband's the CFO. Like, that's great until like, what if something happens, and knock on wood, it's just those things that life can hit you, and you don't want to be not prepared for it, right?
Mm-hmm. At least the fundamentals, and that's what you're focusing on in terms of investing, right? Like at least probably the first bit of the book is just getting into the basics, right?
Personal finances.
Yeah. And even if you do that, like that's more than a lot of people have. But
Definitely,
I like the idea that you can't rely. It's not because you're afraid, or you're worried that somebody's gonna leave or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's so that if something happens that you're not expecting, you at least understand what to do.
Exactly. You have options, so you're not cornered. And there's, money is just one of those things that can really, and I talk about it in the intro of my book, it's like people fight over it, people die over it, people like relationships are torn over it. So it's like, you might as well try to make it as easy as possible on your life.
We all have it.
Mm-hmm.
We all,
exactly.
It affects all of us,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
It's not everybody has a car,
That's right, yeah.
But everybody has money.
Exactly.
So if you don't know everything about cars, fine.
Yeah.
That's great. You can take the bus and be in somebody else's car. Again, that's
right.
relying on them. But you have money. Like, you will always be making money and spending money.
Exactly.
And you gotta take control.
Exactly. Right? And I say, hey, if you know how to spend money, you are going to learn how to manage it properly. And that's it. There are no excuses. So you know how to make and spend money, you're going to learn how to manage it.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so we might as well say the title of the book, because the hour just flew by.
Oh, wow.
Usually it's, it's just an hour. I look at the time and it's like 10 minutes, and then I look and it's like an hour, right?
Yeah, that's
really because that means we're in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so The Sassy Investor is the name of the book,
yes.
right? The Sassy Investor?
The Sassy Investor.
Yeah, I see the there. Yeah. The Sassy Investor Investment Workbook. You do call it a workbook. Yeah. Great.
Yes.
So, and Michelle Hung is you,
That's
and the illustrations by
Fei Lu.
Your friend Fei.
Yes.
And this is going to be, you're going to figure out distribution at some point. Do you know what you're going to do with it? Like where people will buy online?
It'll be available on Amazon, Chapters. So for now, so definitely available online and on my website as well.
Which is?
www.thesassyinvestor.ca.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for coming to the studio. It was really great, and thanks for stepping out of the IB world, as you call it, to share all this stuff and help people.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Obviously love sharing my story and any insights I can provide, anyone's life I can have a positive effect on. As I'm on a mission. I want to spread financial literacy and help as many people as possible.
Perfect. So thesassyinvestor.ca, and people can contact you, and they can work with you if they want directly too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just the book, and you have other products too.
Yeah, I have a membership site. Yeah, so you can join for $9 a month. Again, very accessible for everyone. Lots of fun videos. I work very hard not to be boring. Yeah. So everything's just fun. I'm on Instagram at the Sassy Investor, so you can follow me for a lot of tips. And just check me out, and love to hear from you and connect with people.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Michelle.
Great. Thank you so much.
If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there subscribing, please leave me a 5-star rating or write a review or do both of those things. If you're already a subscriber, that's fantastic. Please join my Facebook group so that I can know who you are and thank you personally. To find the group, go to Facebook and search for The Personal Finance Show. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Personal Finance Show. I'll be back next week with the godfather of Canadian personal finance, Tom Drake.